the world. Welcome to this episode of Random Life and your host, Estella Romano. Today, I want to talk about the topic that I think a lot of humanitarians are thinking about, getting ready for, and also getting ready for how to do it best. And the topic is interviews, right? Job interviews. And job interviews has become one of those most challenging things to do as the competition grows. And it feels like it's one of those things that you don't know if you can really do something about it or it won't matter anyway, and therefore we don't prepare for it. And then there's a lot of like back and forth vacillation that I have observed recently. Whatever the situation that you might be going through now, here is the fundamental things that I would like to touch upon, including three mistakes that I see a lot of humanitarians make, and then what to do about them, right? So, number one is if you decided to apply for a job within the sector, you may as well get ready for it in advance in terms of getting ready for interviews because doing it half-ass or doing it out of this disbelief or doing it out of, well, it won't matter anyway is not going to get you a good impression and focusing on the outcome that you would like to, right? So that's why if you have decided to apply for a job within the sector, then I would suggest go for it and get ready for it as much as you can. And the way that I always want people to think about it is there is the default way of doing things, right? Which is how we have always done the interviews. And then there is the way that we would like to do an interview, which is the standard or I don't know, whatever the best case scenarios that you would like to go for. And then see the difference between the two. I'm noticing also that it may no longer fly that we just keep doing things the way we have always done. Unless, of course, you are thinking that you will be using networks and many other resources to influence the process. Maybe that is the case. But even then, think about how you would like to be showing up at the job interviews and what is the standard you would like to go for, no matter what your brain will be saying about how it doesn't matter or how it won't work, how why bother? Even if all of those chatters are there, you still go for this is how I show up. This is how I do things, no matter what the situation is. Right? So that's why check with yourself first about the default way of doing it, how you always do it versus how you want to do it, and what's the difference, and then go for working on those differences. And here are the three mistakes that I see a lot of humanitarians are making when they're going for job interviews, right? Excuse me. And I want to talk about this. Like, I could probably bring a lot more mistakes that I see, but I also thought that what would be so essential that we still need to work on it that would make the difference, even if you didn't work on anything else. And that's why really I wanted to focus on these three. So the first one that I see is a lot of coaching that I do is around humanitarians telling me that they approach the job interview as, I need you, please give me the job, right? So in other words, they approach the job interviews from the place of, I'm going to do anything you ask me, whatever you say, I don't care. I just need a job, kind of a bit of a desperate or a needy place. And when you do that, even if you are like showing up outside saying all the right things, but if the energy is that one, if the energy deep down is coming from, oh my God, I have to do this well. Otherwise, it's not going to work, or I like this has to work kind of an energy, then that will show up not only in the words that we say, but also in the energy behind it. Like the nonverbal communication will be also showing that needy energy. And I have seen this so many times over and over again as I do mock interviews with people and I see that that is how the other people will be perceiving you, right? Other people will be perceiving you as um, I need you guys all to like me, to tell me that I'm a great candidate so I can get this job. That energy is going to speak louder than anything else. Now, when we know that this might be the situation that we're in and the energy is speaking that way, now we need to do something about it, because if we don't, humans pick up on needy energy, humans pick up on I need you or desperate energy faster than you can even explain with words. And they will then make decisions without even recognizing, because it's a very subconscious way of making decisions, right? That they will immediately feel like, I don't think that I should hire, or they will be maybe thinking about, I will hire maybe out of, pity kind of energy, and not because you merit that job, right? Because we all want to be hired by merit, by our amazing expertise and skill set, and not because of our needy energy that's knocking on someone else's consciousness. That's not how we want to be hired, right? So that's why what we want to then recognize is, how are we really energetically coming to the interview, not only what are the things we're preparing for, right? Now, how do you know that this is what's happening? Is obviously one is the feeling stress of how you need this job, and if you don't get it, then all the things will be doom and gloom. That might be one way that you're coming with that energy. Another one is you not trusting yourself that you can get a job either in this interview or any other interview, right? Your like fear brain, scarcity part of your survival brain is all saying, we need this job, we need this job, and if we don't get this job, then everything is bad. That energy will come up and speak more louder than anything else you'll be saying. So that's why recognizing that this is what's happening. So there is the fear, there is the scarcity. These are the feelings that you might be experiencing. In terms of the thinking process, your thinking thoughts might be, I need this, it has to work, I can't go any other, or I can't afford to lose this opportunity. All of those thoughts will be creating that energy, right? So then your job is to clean up those thoughts and feelings, at least for that job interview, even if that might be true, even if you're like circumstantially you are feeling like in such a pressure. But adding the interview pressure on top of the pressure that you're having will just make you not focus on the things that you would like to focus. Instead, you will be focusing on things that don't, or you shouldn't be focusing on. That's, I will be talking as a second mistake. So the way that you clean up those thoughts and those feelings is obviously, in terms of feelings, what we want to do is process, release those emotions, those pressures, right? With breathing, with meditation, with different techniques that you probably heard me talk about so many times. Now, in terms of the thought process, what we want to come to the interview is, we want to come to the interview with the mindset or thought process that says, I want to contribute to this as much, or I want to choose this interview and to contribute to this impact as much as they would like to choose me. In other words, bringing your power a bit back to the level that you are a professional who has a lot of amazing expertise and who is good at doing this job. So you're coming to the table with your solutions and not just beg for jobs. That's the shift that needs to take place, because if we don't come to that place or job interview that way, then we will already start the relationship with a very much a power disbalance. And the power disbalance will make us then do things that we don't want to do, make us stress out in ways that we wouldn't have stressed out otherwise if we believed we had other options. right? So imagine going to the job interview knowing that you have a lot of job interviews and options lined up versus when you feel like you haven't had any job interview in ages and now you're doing it and then you just feel so freaked out, how different those experiences are, right? So that's why whatever your experience, circumstantial experience is, you may need to forget the circumstances for that period, meaning that you need to focus on, okay, you are someone who's a professional, who's an expert, who is a lot of skills, who comes to the table with those solutions to work on, rather than please give me a job. As long as you give me a job, I'm willing to do anything, right? So that's the first part that you need to work on. That's the first mistake. Now the second mistake that I see is even more prevalent that I think we don't really pay attention to is we tend to get so anxious about controlling a lot of different factors while we are at the job interview, right? So I will give you a very um, common way of doing it, which I used to do it a lot as well, which is focusing on the panel members' reaction, right? And this is just one of those things that, like, oh my God, we know that we cannot do that. We know that we shouldn't do that. And of course, to an extent, maybe it's a human condition that we may not be able to do any other way. But still, what happens if we focus on the panel members' reaction? We end up not focusing on the things that matter. We end up not focusing on the actual things that we're talking about because we're now looking at whether they're liking us, whether they're not liking us. Excuse me, and especially not knowing if that is even true, right? Not knowing that if they're really liking us or not, not knowing what are they actually thinking, but we tend to make a lot of assumptions about their facial reactions that we are then willing to um, drop whatever that we're saying, whatever the ways that we are arguing for our case. Instead of arguing for our case, we're just focusing on whether what we are saying is going to make them like us or not. And as I said again, it's not an easy thing to do to just not focus on them, right? Because our brain wants us to say, well, if you get them like you, and by like you, if we see their facial expressions of smiling or nodding, then that means we are going in the right direction. That's what our fear brain tells us, right? Even though that's not true either, because I have been in panels where I have nodded because I'm just a nodding type of person. I'm very smiling and, pleasant, wanting to be pleasant type of person. And I kept smiling and nodding to the candidate in front of us, even though I didn't really see how their response were responding to what we are asking or at the level they were asking. I didn't think that was the case, but I still wanted to be supportive so that they could continue talking in the way a bit more relaxed. And that's hoping that with that way they will feel a bit more relaxed and they will be comfortable talking about even more of the focus that we are talking about, right? But I only did that because I was in that situation and I knew how difficult it was for me to not focus on the panel's reaction. So that's why I was doing that. But it didn't mean that, oh, that means I will hire you. It didn't mean that that means I agree with you. It meant that I hear you. I see what you are saying, but I could also bring up a lot of arguments why that's not what we're looking for as a panel member. I could have said that, but I didn't do that. And also, there was no platform for doing it. So, therefore, as a candidate in the job interview, seeing and trying to interpret the panel's facial expressions or whether they're liking us or not is a waste of time, and it's actually very stressful because our brain will want to interpret in ways maybe someone didn't smile and we interpret as, oh my God, they're hating us, and therefore like lose track of what we're saying and how we're saying. We may also lose track of what uh, emphasis we want to put on, where we want to put on those emphasis, right? Because it's very challenging for us to do multitasking. And therefore, the best way for you to think about it is no matter what the panel's expression is, right, facial expression, other nonverbal expression is, you cannot interpret anything from it, and therefore you may as well focus on what you can control, which is all the things you are saying, right? And that's the training matter. Obviously, it's not something that comes naturally for many people. I hear you, but that you need to train on. And the third mistake that I see that keeps happening a lot, that I alluded to already in my previous conversation, is the answers that we're giving in the job interviews are not often at the level that they're asked, right? So, for instance, if we're applying for a job at the senior leadership position, senior, I don't know, program officer, project officer, protection, whatever it is that we're applying for, but we keep giving examples from one case management that we did or to another case management, the levels will not be matching the job position and the questions that the panel is asking, right? So, in other words, we need to think about if we're applying for a job at a senior level, the responses need to be also made at the senior level, meaning at the level of strategy discussion, at the level of managing several or teams, at the level of resolving topics at a higher level, right? So we need to be showcasing those experiences. And let's say that you don't have those experiences, but you're still daring or wanting to apply for a higher position, then you may want to at least take the example and the experience that you have and then showcase how you would have solved it at a higher management level position. If you were at that level, how would you solve that problem? That might be another way to go around, but it's very challenging to for people to think, observe what they're saying, what the examples they're giving in the job interviews. For them, it's very challenging to look at their own examples and say, is this the is this example at the level of the position I'm applying for, or I just came up with this example because I didn't think of any other, right? And that's an important part for you to make your reflections and preparations for, so that you know how to respond at the level they're asking for, and also noticing from the keywords like if they're asking about strategies, management of team, or solving particular ethical dilemmas, excuse me, or something that they expect you to be solving at a higher, bigger level, but you are doing it at a smaller level. It may not, even though the example might be a good one, it may not be satisfying the complexity that they are looking for in the job interview, right? So that's why I would like for you to get so specific about, as I said in the beginning, right? So there is the default way that we have always showed up at the job interview, and there is the intentional way of this is how I want to show up for these type of jobs. And when you start doing that, look at what are the mistakes you might be making that you haven't really been aware of, and then how are you going to fix them as you get ready for this job interview, right? So the way that I would do that is I would say, okay, I need to really fix my fixation on the panel members' expression because I don't want that to be influencing my way of showing up at the interview, right? Because the more I fixate on them, I'm not fixating on what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. So that's why that's the thing I worked a lot on. And then working on how do I articulate my arguments as to why I'm a good candidate or the best one among whoever they're interviewing, and how do I argue for them and uh, focus on them only rather than making it about myself as, oh my God, am I doing this right or not? I must be this, I must be that, right? My background being filled with those negative self-talks, that is what I want to avoid. Because if I'm thinking at in two different ways, right? On the one hand, I'm saying things, on the other, I have a lot of, I don't know, noise going on in the background, you know what I mean? Then it will be also very difficult to concentrate, and my energy level will not be clean, meaning that it is unattached and professional and talking about why I want to contribute to this impact and in what way my expertise are best suited versus thinking about a lot of noise of my own voices, a lot of noise about the panel's reactions or any other things that I may not need to focus on or control at the time or have no control over essentially. Okay, my dears, I hope that these were helpful ways for you to get ready for the interviews, job interviews. And if you're going to do this, I would suggest let's do it as best as we can so that at least we have done our best instead of, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that, I didn't do this, why am I this? And then getting into a whole spiral, which I have been to many times as well. I really don't like being in that stage after the job interview, so that's why how can we do our best to get ready for the job interview? And I would love to invite you to do this work with me in my group coaching where we do simulations and mock interviews every week if you'd like to really hone in on the skills that or the mistakes that I talked about now so that we can get you to the place where you really feel, okay, I'm showing up as best as I can and I feel good about it. At least I have done my part of that as well, right? And this is my lifetime of support coaching group. And I would love to support in a personalized way in that group coaching container. Okay, my dears, message me or book a consult on the link below, and I will be talking to you.